Welcome to another edition of Mental Health Moments. I'm Dr. Beverly Sargent, the Executive Director of the City of District Heights Family and Youth Services Bureau. We're blessed to be talking to Kathy Callwood Fauntroy today. She's the author of No Ordinary Love, and she's also a survivor of childhood domestic violence. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Dr. Sargent. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the first questions, or the first question I have to ask you, is about the title, No Ordinary Love. How did you come up with that title?
Well, I came up with that title because I lived through, as a child, domestic violence between two adults. And I got to the point where I thought, if this is love, this is not ordinary. This is not normal. Mm-hmm. So no ordinary love would flow like this and go like this. And if you think this is love, it's awfully strange. Now, I was a child, so I didn't really know what love was. Mm-hmm. But I would see people interact that didn't do what these people did. And I thought, this is not ordinary. And then it's got to be an extraordinary love that lets you get through that. Mm-hmm. That lets you go through that and keep doing it and go through that and keep doing it. That's got to be unordinary too.
Right.
So, and then later on, Sade did a song called No Ordinary Love, and her song was totally different than what I had lived through. This was no ordinary love to me. No ordinary love would look like this to me, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
That's where I got that title.
You know, this month, October, the month of October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and then reading your book and putting some of the information with research together about how children are called the hidden victims or silent victims. And the book really goes into your childhood. It's like you're writing it from the voice of a child.
Absolutely. It was from my perspective because all I could see was the child side of it. Mm-hmm. We were pulled to and fro. Things were happening to us and around us, but no one was consulting us. And we were children, so no one has to ask our permission. But I was thinking, hello, can we have a voice? Can we say, don't keep doing this? Can we tell you to not keep going back to this?
Yeah.
And I did feel like a silent victim. We were not counseled. We were not, when there's help to get, there's help for the victim, the abuser, and the help for the person being abused. Yeah. But no one ever addressed our needs and our concerns and our fears, which were really what we felt was fear.
Yeah. Can you go a little bit deeper into what your life was like living in that household? It was you, your brother, your sister. They were older than you, so you were the baby.
Right.
And then your mother and your stepdad. And your stepdad was the abuser.
Exactly. He was the abuser, and my stepfather was a wonderful person when he wasn't drinking. But when he drank, he was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mm-hmm. He was a violent drunk. And I have found that learned that there are different types of drunks. There are crying drunks and laughing drunks and drunks who sit in the corner and drool on themselves and may urinate on themselves and embarrass themselves in other ways. Yeah. He was a violent drunk, and when he got drunk, he was going to fight somebody before he laid down to sleep, even if it was the dog in the yard. He would kick the dog. Somebody was going to get in a fight with him. Yeah. He would fight with his friends sometimes and be on the losing end because he was out of control and drunk, but a lot of the times it was my mom. And he would go out and get drunk, or they would go to events together, and he would drink too much. He would drink until every drop was gone, and when the liquor ran out, he'd go to his truck or his car and get more that he bought with him personally, and then he would come home and he would start a fight, and we would get up in the middle of the night and have to run, have to scramble and get clothes together. Sometimes it was a weeknight. We'd end up the next morning at someone else's house. I'd wake up and not have my uniform shirt, or have a blue sock and a brown sock, and not have the right shoes, didn't bring my barrettes, and as a child, those things meant a lot to you. Right. You had to go to school the next day unprepared. Yeah. We would wake up and be at someone else's bus stop, and the other kids would be like, what are you doing at so-and-so's bus stop? You don't ride our bus. And we really didn't have an explanation for it. And we were brought in and out of a situation like that repeatedly.
Yeah, I remember in the book, you even spelled out all of the different schools you had been to. So you all moved around a lot. You were in different schools a lot. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I have gone to several schools in Prince George's County during my middle school and high school years because my mother was leaving my stepfather and moving somewhere else. I went to Douglas High School, Surrattsville High School, graduated from high school in Dale City, Virginia. I went to Stephen Decatur. I went to Clinton Grove. I went to Surrattsville Junior High School when it was there. I went to several different schools mainly because we were leaving at some point or another, getting away from him. And then eventually they would get back together. He would move into wherever we were then, and we rinse and repeat it, rinse and repeat. And so it was kind of traumatizing. It was also difficult to have friends. I have one best friend right now since I was in 4th grade because her mother and my mother were good friends, and her mother and father were some of the friends and people that we were able to run to very often. And her father would stand up to my stepfather when he came over there because they know where to go to look for you too. And you run to a friend or a neighbor and you're almost putting them in jeopardy as well. But he would come over there to look for my mother after she ran from him, and my best friend's father would stand up to him because he said, I have a gun too, you're not the only one.
You know what I think is interesting is when you were a child, you felt like you didn't have a voice. I mean, and that is very clear in the book. But then at some point, you found your strength and you put it all in this book. What happened? How was that transition?
I think part of it was after his death. And his death was tragic. And I felt like I needed an outlet. I felt like there were issues that I still don't have addressed today, I believe. I was never offered counseling. We as children were just having to deal with the situation at the time. And then when things were okay, we were like, okay, let's not talk about it. Let's hope for the best. Let's just go with the flow as long as it's, quiet, and as long as he's calm, as long as things are going okay, let's just accept that. And so we never had the opportunity to release it, to be counseled about it, to have anybody ask us, what do you really feel? What would you like for them to do? And so at some point I felt like I need to say some things. And I also wanted this book to let adults know, maybe if they read it, that your kids do get affected by this. It's not just decisions you're making, oh, you're kids, you don't understand anyway. Well, we understand that we're in fear. We understand we're terrified by this person. Well, I understand that every time he drinks, I'm sitting there waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that shoe would be a boot with him because he's just going to get out of control. So it was a therapeutic thing for me.
Okay. So speaking of counseling and, the book being therapeutic, what would you say, or what do you think the little girl Kathy would say to helpers today if she had the opportunity? What would she say?
I would say to helpers on different levels, whether it be a teacher, a minister, a neighbor who's being a friend, that the immediate issue and the immediate concern is to separate the two adults and to make sure that the person being abused is okay and safe. And if that person has visible signs of the abuse, to make sure they're addressed medically or whatever and treated. But then also to look at the children. You're looking up here and we're down here saying we need help too. And we don't know how to say that. We don't know how to say, we're tired of this. We don't know how to say, don't go back and do this again. We don't know how to say, this is embarrassing to us. We don't know how to say, this is not how adults should be behaving. But they need to look at the kids too. The children are they're the silent victims, like you said.
Kathy, what was the worst day for little Kathy?
The worst day was being chased out of the house and trying to get away from him after beating my mom and having him shoot at us when we were trying to leave. And that happened more than once. And
So he had a gun, he was shooting at your mother,
Right.
and the
But we're in the
entire
car.
family is running out of the house.
Right, we're in the car. He would come home, his pattern was if he was out alone, he would come home, she'd be in the bed, we'd be in the house, you know, already in bed and ready to go, you know, getting ready for school the next day and that kind of thing. He would come home, go in the room, lock the door, because he knew he was gonna start something, and start a fight with her. She's in there innocent, just, you know, sleep, taking care of your home and the children. And he was my stepfather. Let me remind you of that. But he would start a fight. Then we would wake up, startled, like, what's going on? And you've, you know, seen that in the book in a couple of instances.
Right.
And then my sister, who's 4 years older than me, my brother's 2 years older than me, we had to decide, do we bust in there? Do we wait and see if she gets out? And then they'd have to break in. My sister, being a girl, she's like, I'm the oldest, but I'm not gonna let him beat my mom.
Right.
My brother, being the only boy, he was only 2 years older than me, but he's like, I've got to protect my mom. And they break in the room, have to jump on him, they pull him off of her, hit him with something, you know, that kind of stuff. And we grab what clothes we could and try to run out. Once they knock him off into the floor or something, he's, you know, drunk and out of sorts and trying to collect himself, then we would run out of the house with whatever we could grab. We get in the car to back out of the driveway, and by then he's grabbed a gun and either loaded it or maybe it's already loaded, and he'd come out and shoot at us when we're trying to pull out of the driveway. And he did that more than once.
Wow. That had to have been
It was
extremely traumatic.
It was frightening. It was frightening. And what was almost as bad was going back. Going back after that had happened, after she went to work with black eyes and wearing sunglasses and that kind of thing, and him coming over to where she was and promising her this and buying her a washer and dryer and coming over with a new car and that kind of stuff. And that car ride back to that same house was just so painful.
Yeah.
So
I
painful.
can see the emotion in your eyes even today.
It still bothers me even now at this age.
You know, Kathy, as adults, we want to look at kids and, you know, children going through any type of hurt and pain, and we want to say that it's going to be all right. But the reality is, it's not always all right.
No.
So what's your message to children today who might be, you know, traumatized by anything actually, but you know, in your case, it was domestic violence, and some of the kids who may be watching, it could be, you know, domestic violence, violence in their home. What's your message to them?
My message is that you will get through it, but it's not going to be pain-free. Adults are making decisions that affect adults, and they think they're adult decisions, but they also affect you. Find someone that you can talk to, even if it's just each other, even if it's other siblings, someone to share this with, and try to hold on. You know, reach out to someone else who might be able to put some things in place to help you. But until they can help you, you've just got to hold on. You've just got to pray that the adults either finally separate and see that it's better for them to not be together because there's an oil and vinegar situation going on here, or someone gets you out of that situation. But to think that you just have to grow through this is very difficult. That the only way for me to get out of this is to adult out of this house. My sister got married at the age of 16. She wasn't pregnant. She didn't need to get married. She got married at the age of 16 before she graduated from high school. And I think it was mainly to get out of the house. And that's
to get
not
to safety.
To get to safety, to just get a space of her own. And you know, as a child watching this, you grow up and sometimes make the wrong decisions yourself because you've seen this so long. And I made the opposite decision. I was repelled by men who drank. When I would go out to clubs and when I was younger and I would see somebody drinking or smoking, I'd be like, okay, I don't like him. Okay, he's drinking. Okay, you know, because I'm thinking that it automatically is going to lead to something bad. And I would have a boyfriend who would have a couple of drinks and he'd be like, I only had one beer. Well, you smell like a distillery. You smell like you had a whole six-pack. I was so critical. Because I was afraid of someone overdoing it. And I have never drank. partly as a result of it.
What's your message to the adults who are in the midst of domestic violence situation, and they have children who are witnessing all of this, experiencing this pain?
That your children are victims as well. Your children are victims along with you. A lot of women will kill a man over their children, but you think that what they're seeing a man do to you is not affecting your children. My stepfather, all our lives, was never allowed to touch us. And she told him, I didn't let their father beat them. You're certainly not going to beat them. But you're letting him beat you. And we're seeing that. And you're pulling us back and forth. The adults need to do what adults are supposed to do. Leave situations like that. Separate yourself from situations like that. And don't keep putting your children in harm's way. Because every time he shot at her, it could have been a bullet for us.
That's true.
He didn't care where that bullet went. The bullet didn't know.
Right.
And he was drunk. So he wasn't, in his, his best form.
Right.
If he was a good shot, if you want to call it that, you're putting your child in harm's way.
Yeah.
But I have a message for the abuser too.
Okay.
You're putting yourself at risk. In my situation, the abuser is dead because of his abuse. And you're putting yourself at risk and you don't even know it. At some point, the woman, and a lot of women might be in jail for it now, but the woman gets to the point where they're tired of it. They pick up the first thing that they can get to, the closest thing that they can reach, and it may be deadly for you. You think you're abusing someone else, but if you push them against the wall too much, they will come out fighting sometimes.
Yeah.
And you may be on the losing end of it at some point.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you so much for the book. It's called No Ordinary Love by Kathy Callwood Fauntroy. And I want to say, for any of you who may be in the midst of a domestic violence situation or has been traumatized by or have been traumatized by anything, please feel free to call the City of District Heights Family Youth Services Bureau. Our telephone number is 301-336-7600. We're here to help. Thank you.